Eroding funds for sustainable development in LDCs, a critical analysis. Welcome to the Bold African Voice, BAV, your go-to platform for critical insights, bold perspectives, and forward-thinking analysis on Africa's most pressing issues. I'm Abdul Karim Kargbo, born and raised in Africa. Today, we delve into a pressing topic, Africa's debt crisis and its impact on sustainable development in least developed countries. Stay tuned as we unpack the challenges, compare strategies across the continent, and explore innovative solutions shaping Africa's future. Africa's least developed countries, LDCs, are grappling with an escalating debt crisis that threatens to derail their progress toward the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. This multifaceted crisis laid bare during the second session of the Committee on Economic Governance in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, underscores the urgent need for innovative solutions to balance fiscal constraints with development priorities. The debt dilemma, draining resources for development. According to Ms. Oybank Abajiran, Economic Affairs Officer at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, UNECA, Africa's LDCs are spending an increasing share of their GDP on debt servicing. In 2022, 11.6% of Africa's export earnings were channeled toward debt repayments, overshadowing expenditures on critical sectors like health and education. The disproportionate allocation of resources is stark. 4.8% of GDP was spent on debt servicing in 2021, compared to 2.6% for health and 4.8% for education. This imbalance perpetuates inequality, particularly in regions where social protection systems reach a mere 12–13% of the population, leaving millions vulnerable to economic and social shocks. Exacerbating factors, the double blow of COVID-19 and climate change. The COVID-19 pandemic and climate-related disasters have further strained fiscal capacity. For African LDCs, these external shocks have amplified the debt burden while stalling investments in resilience and sustainable development. Ms. Abajiran highlighted the crucial need for inclusive social protection systems. However, fiscal constraints and insufficient domestic revenue mobilization continue to hinder such efforts, leaving a significant financing gap for SDG-related investments. Mozambique's case, a microcosm of the debt crisis. Mozambique epitomizes the struggles faced by African LDCs. As Ms. Pamela Mabanda of the Ministry of Finance reported, the country allocates nearly 70% of its expenditure to debt repayment, leaving minimal fiscal space for sustainable development initiatives. Mozambique's reliance on imports for intermediate and capital goods exacerbates its trade balance deficit, further tightening its economic straitjacket. Innovative solutions and strategic frameworks. Efforts to address the crisis include adopting integrated national financing frameworks, INFFs, as highlighted by UNECA's Alan Mukungu. These frameworks align financing with development priorities, enabling countries to optimize resource allocation while ensuring transparency and accountability. INFFs have the potential to unlock domestic and international resources, offering a pathway for African LDCs to navigate the debt trap and reinvest in their future. Building resilience. Key interventions. 1. Economic diversification. African LDCs must shift from commodity-dependent economies to more diversified ones by fostering industrialization and service industries such as tourism and IT. Countries like Rwanda and Ghana provide examples of leveraging digital transformation and industrial policies to reduce economic vulnerabilities. 2. Empowering youth and women. The demographic dividend offers an immense opportunity for growth. Investments in education, skills training, and entrepreneurship programs, particularly targeting youth and women, can unlock human capital potential. For instance, Ethiopia's strides in gender equality and youth-focused initiatives demonstrate the transformative power of inclusive policies. 3. Strengthening governance. Good governance remains central to building trust and attracting investment. Transparent institutions, anti-corruption measures, and participatory decision-making processes are critical. Lessons from Botswana, often cited for its governance model, illustrate how institutional strength can drive economic stability. 4. Climate action and sustainability. Africa's LDCs are disproportionately affected by climate change, despite contributing minimally to global emissions. Investments in renewable energy, climate-smart agriculture, and access to global climate finance are essential for building resilience. Kenya's leadership in renewable energy, with over 75% of its electricity sourced from renewables, offers a replicable model. Regional and global collaboration. African LDCs cannot navigate this crisis in isolation. Regional integration through the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, has the potential to boost intra-African trade and economic stability. A stronger focus on regional value chains and collaborative industrialization can mitigate external economic pressures. Globally, the role of international financial institutions and creditor nations is paramount. Initiatives like the G20 Common Framework for Debt Treatments must be expanded and reformed to provide meaningful relief. Additionally, fair trade agreements and concessional financing can empower African LDCs to channel resources into sustainable development. Forward-looking recommendations for African leaders. Prioritize human development. Investments in education, healthcare, and social protection systems must be central to national agendas. Empowered citizens are the foundation of innovation and resilience. Enhance regional cooperation. Leveraging the AfCFTA and other frameworks can stimulate trade and shared economic growth. Cross-border infrastructure and policy alignment will further strengthen regional integration. Adopt climate-resilient strategies. Incorporating sustainability into development plans and accessing global climate finance will reduce vulnerabilities. Partnerships with countries leading in green technologies can expedite this transition. Foster good governance. Transparent governance, coupled with robust anti-corruption frameworks, will ensure fiscal accountability and attract foreign investment. Countries must engage their citizens in policymaking to build inclusive systems. The path forward. This analysis highlights the critical need for bold, transformative strategies to address Africa's debt crisis while advancing sustainable development. The African continent stands at a crossroads, with the potential to transform its challenges into opportunities through resilience, innovation, and solidarity. The next phase of this discussion will explore specific case studies of successful debt management and economic recovery across Africa, with insights into how these models can be scaled across the continent. Case studies in debt management and economic recovery. 1. Rwanda, a model for debt efficiency. Rwanda's success in managing debt while prioritizing development has positioned it as a benchmark for other African LDCs. Despite its history of challenges, the country has implemented a strategic blend of concessional loans and domestic revenue mobilization. Its Vision 2050 development framework integrates debt management with investments in education, health, and technology, demonstrating how disciplined fiscal policies can drive growth. Key lessons. Leveraging concessional loans for infrastructure development. Streamlining tax policies to boost domestic revenue collection. Investing in sectors with high returns such as ICT and renewable energy. 2. Ghana, innovative financing through green bonds. Ghana's issuance of green bonds highlights an innovative approach to accessing sustainable financing. By tying debt instruments to environmental and social projects, Ghana has attracted investors interested in climate resilience. These funds have been directed toward renewable energy, waste management, and sustainable agriculture, aligning debt management with the SDGs. Key lessons. Diversify financing sources beyond traditional lenders. Align borrowing strategies with sustainable and inclusive development goals. Engage private sector stakeholders in financing green initiatives. 3. Seychelles, debt for nature swaps. Seychelles pioneered debt for nature swaps, where portions of its debt were forgiven in exchange for commitments to marine conservation. This approach not only eased the debt burden, but also reinforced environmental sustainability. This innovative strategy underscores how aligning debt management with global environmental priorities can yield win-win outcomes. Key lessons. Negotiate creative debt relief mechanisms with creditor nations. Focus on niche sectors, e.g., marine conservation, where the country holds a comparative advantage. Build partnerships with international environmental organizations and funds. The role of technology in debt management and development enhancing domestic revenue collection. Digital transformation offers immense potential for improving tax collection efficiency and transparency. Mobile payment platforms and blockchain technology can reduce leakages in public finances, ensuring more resources are available for SDG investments. For example, Kenya's mobile money ecosystem, led by M-Pesa, has not only improved financial inclusion, but also enhanced government revenue through digital tax collection systems. Increasing accountability in public spending. Technological tools such as open budget platforms enable citizens to track public spending in real time, fostering transparency and trust. African LDCs like Uganda have piloted these platforms to monitor social sector investments, improving accountability and reducing corruption. Boosting regional trade through digital integration. The AfCFTA's success hinges on digital trade facilitation. Platforms that integrate customs, tariffs, and trade data can significantly reduce cross-border transaction costs. Nigeria's e-customs initiative serves as a case study, illustrating how digital systems can simplify trade and enhance regional economic cooperation. Addressing global inequities in debt relief. While domestic reforms are essential, global structural inequities exacerbate Africa's debt crisis. Many African LDCs face high interest rates and unfavorable terms compared to developed nations. Moreover, international financial institutions often impose stringent conditionalities, limiting fiscal autonomy. Advocating for fairer terms. African leaders must collectively advocate for lower borrowing costs and more flexible repayment schedules. Platforms such as the African Union, AU, and the United Nations can amplify these demands, leveraging Africa's strategic importance in global geopolitics and natural resources. Reforming international financial institutions calls for reforming the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank have gained momentum. These institutions should shift from austerity-driven programs to growth-oriented financing, emphasizing investments in education, health, and infrastructure. Debt relief initiatives. Existing initiatives, such as the G20 Common Framework, must be expanded to include middle-income African countries with LDC characteristics. Additionally, global creditors should consider offering targeted debt relief for investments aligned with climate action and the SDGs. Fostering Pan-African solidarity for shared solutions, strengthening the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA. The AfCFTA represents a significant opportunity for African LDCs to integrate into regional value chains, reducing reliance on external markets. Harmonized policies on trade tariffs, labor mobility, and cross-border investments will enhance economic resilience. Building knowledge exchange platforms. African LDCs can benefit from sharing best practices in debt management, fiscal policy, and sustainable development. Regional institutions like the African Development Bank, AFDB, can facilitate these exchanges, creating a repository of scalable solutions. Mobilizing diaspora resources. The African diaspora represents a significant untapped resource for development financing. By creating investment instruments such as diaspora bonds, African LDCs can channel remittances into critical sectors like education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Toward a sustainable development financing ecosystem. As the conversation continues, the next focus will be on the role of private sector partnerships, innovative funding models, and the integration of climate finance into national development strategies. This approach will highlight how African LDCs can transition from debt dependence to a sustainable, inclusive growth paradigm that benefits all stakeholders. Unlocking the role of private sector partnerships. Catalyzing investment through public-private partnerships, PPPs. Public-private partnerships, PPPs, offer a viable pathway for African LDCs to bridge the infrastructure and development financing gaps. By leveraging private sector expertise and funding, governments can implement large-scale projects in energy, transportation, healthcare, and education. For example, Senegal's Toll Highway project, developed under a PPP model, improved infrastructure connectivity while maintaining fiscal prudence. Key considerations for effective PPPs. 1. Establish clear legal and regulatory frameworks to ensure transparency. 2. Align projects with national development priorities. 3. Mitigate risks through guarantees and co-financing models, encouraging venture capital and startup ecosystems. Private investments in innovation and technology are essential for diversifying economies. Countries like Kenya and Nigeria have witnessed a surge in venture capital inflows into fintech and agritech startups, creating jobs and boosting economic resilience. Replicating such ecosystems across LDCs can unlock untapped entrepreneurial potential. Integrating climate finance into national development strategies, accessing global climate funds. African LDCs must capitalize on global climate finance mechanisms, such as the Green Climate Fund, GCF, and Adaptation Fund. These instruments provide concessional financing for climate-resilient projects, including renewable energy, water management, and reforestation. However, challenges like complex application processes and limited technical capacity often hinder access. Steps to improve access. 1. Build institutional capacity to prepare compelling funding proposals. 2. Strengthen collaborations with international climate finance experts. 3. Streamline national frameworks to align with global climate goals. Promoting climate-smart agriculture. With agriculture employing a significant portion of the population in African LDCs, transitioning to climate-smart practices is critical. Techniques like drought-resistant crops, agroforestry, and efficient irrigation can reduce climate vulnerability while enhancing food security. Rwanda's Sustainable Agricultural Intensification Program offers a replicable blueprint for integrating climate resilience into farming practices. Embracing technology for development financing blockchain for transparent debt management blockchain technology holds transformative potential in ensuring accountability in debt utilization. By creating immutable and transparent records, governments can enhance trust among creditors and citizens. For instance, Sierra Leone has experimented with blockchain in public financial management, demonstrating its viability for broader adoption. Expanding digital financial inclusion. Digital financial services, such as mobile banking, have revolutionized access to credit and savings for underserved populations. Expanding these services in LDCs can mobilize domestic resources and empower citizens to contribute to national development. Ghana's adoption of mobile money interoperability has significantly enhanced financial inclusion, providing valuable lessons for other nations. Leveraging regional integration for economic resilience. Strengthening intra-African trade, facilitated by the AfCFTA, can mitigate external economic shocks by reducing dependency on global markets. By focusing on regional value chains in agriculture, manufacturing, and services, African LDCs can diversify exports and create jobs. Promoting cross-border infrastructure projects. Cross-border infrastructure, such as transportation corridors and energy grids, is vital for regional integration. The Ethiopia-Djibouti Railway exemplifies how joint investments in connectivity can enhance trade and economic cooperation. Enhancing regional financial institutions like the African Export-Import Bank, Afreximbank, play a critical role in providing trade financing and mitigating liquidity constraints. Strengthening these institutions through capitalization and governance reforms can amplify their impact on LDC economies. Toward a comprehensive debt management framework. As we move forward, the focus will turn to actionable policy recommendations for balancing short-term fiscal pressures with long-term development goals. This includes exploring debt restructuring strategies, optimizing tax systems, and creating innovative financing instruments tailored to the unique needs of African LDCs. Exploring debt restructuring strategies. 1. Debt swaps for development. Debt for development swaps offer an innovative solution for African LDCs burdened by unsustainable debt levels. These arrangements allow creditor nations or institutions to cancel part of a country's debt in exchange for investments in agreed-upon development projects such as education, healthcare, or environmental conservation. Case in point, Zambia's Debt for Nature Swap initiative, where portions of external debt were forgiven to fund conservation programs, demonstrates how aligning debt relief with development priorities can yield mutual benefits. Steps to implement. 1. Identify sectors with high social and economic returns. 2. Negotiate transparent terms with creditors. 3. Ensure local ownership and public accountability in project implementation. 2. Adopting maturity extensions and interest rate reductions. African LDCs can negotiate maturity extensions and interest rate reductions with their creditors to ease repayment pressures. This approach provides fiscal space for governments to redirect funds toward pressing development needs. Global precedent. Argentina's debt restructuring program in 2020, which involved extending payment terms and lowering interest rates, offers a model that African LDCs can adapt. 3. Leveraging the G20 Common Framework for Debt Treatments. While the G20 Common Framework aims to provide a coordinated approach to debt relief, its implementation has been slow and complex. African LDCs must collectively advocate for greater inclusivity, efficiency, and alignment of the framework with their development priorities. Optimizing tax systems for domestic revenue mobilization, enhancing tax administration. Efficient tax collection systems are essential for increasing domestic revenue. Countries like Rwanda have embraced digital tax platforms, reducing leakages and expanding the tax base. Actionable strategies. 1. Simplify tax codes to encourage compliance. 2. Leverage technology for automated tax filing and collection. 3. Target informal sectors through tailored tax policies. Combating illicit financial flows, INFFs. Africa loses billions annually to illicit financial flows, depriving LDCs of much-needed revenue. Strengthening anti-money laundering frameworks and collaborating with international partners can curb these losses. Success story. Nigeria's recovery of over $700 million in stolen assets showcases the impact of focused efforts on financial integrity. Broadening the tax base. Many African LDCs rely heavily on indirect taxes, which disproportionately affect low-income populations. Implementing progressive tax policies and introducing wealth taxes can generate additional revenue while promoting equity. Creating innovative financing instruments, sovereign wealth funds, SWFs. Establishing SWFs can help African LDCs save and invest windfall revenues from natural resources. These funds can be channeled into long-term development projects, creating a buffer against external shocks. Example, Botswana's Pula Fund, built on diamond revenues, serves as a model for prudent resource management and future investment. Diaspora bonds. Diaspora bonds offer a means for LDCs to tap into the financial resources of their citizens living abroad. These bonds can finance critical infrastructure and development projects while fostering a sense of national solidarity. Case study. Ethiopia's issuance of diaspora bonds for its Grand Renaissance Dam project demonstrates how these instruments can mobilize funds for transformative initiatives. Engaging multilateral partnerships for inclusive growth, strengthening relationships with development banks. African Development Bank, AfDB, Islamic Development Bank, ISDB, and other multilateral institutions have been pivotal in financing development projects across the continent. Strengthening ties with these institutions can unlock concessional financing and technical expertise. Priority areas for engagement. 1. Infrastructure development. 2. Climate adaptation projects. 3. Social sector investments in health and education. Advocating for reform in international financial institutions, African LDCs must push for a seat at the table in decision-making processes at institutions like the IMF and World Bank. Reform should focus on creating tailored financial instruments that address the unique challenges of LDCs toward inclusive and sustainable growth. As the debt conversation progresses, the focus must expand to address the socio-economic implications of debt servicing. This includes examining how austerity measures affect vulnerable populations and identifying pathways to minimize their impact. Future sections will explore the human cost of debt, the intersection of fiscal policies with social equity, and the role of global advocacy in reshaping Africa's financial landscape. The human cost of debt, social implications of austerity measures. Impact on health and education. Austerity measures, often imposed as part of debt restructuring agreements, disproportionately affect critical social sectors like health and education. African LDCs, already grappling with limited fiscal space, are forced to cut public spending on essential services, leaving millions without access to healthcare and quality education. Case study, Malawi. In Malawi, austerity measures reduced the health sector budget, leading to shortages of essential medicines and medical personnel. This exacerbated child mortality rates and limited progress toward achieving SDG 3, good health and well-being. Policy alternatives. 1. Ring-fencing social spending. Ensure that education and healthcare budgets are protected during fiscal adjustments. 2. Targeted social protection. Implement conditional cash transfers and food subsidies to support vulnerable populations during economic downturns. 3. Invest in preventative measures. Focus on community-based healthcare and vaccination programs to reduce long-term health expenditures. Rising unemployment and inequality debt-induced fiscal tightening often leads to public sector job cuts and stagnant wages. This disproportionately impacts women and youth, who are overrepresented in vulnerable employment. Case study, Mozambique. Mozambique's debt crisis saw a decline in public sector employment, affecting education and healthcare service delivery. Rural areas were particularly hard hit, widening the urban-rural divide. Policy alternatives. 1. Stimulating job creation. Encourage private sector participation in labor-intensive industries such as agriculture and manufacturing. 2. Empowering marginalized groups. Provide targeted training and entrepreneurship programs for women and youth. Fiscal policies and social equity. Progressive taxation. Reducing inequality. Introducing progressive taxation can help LDCs address inequality while generating additional revenue. Wealth taxes, inheritance taxes, and higher income tax brackets for the wealthy can redistribute resources more equitably. Example: South Africa's progressive tax policies, coupled with social grants, have played a role in reducing income inequality, offering valuable insights for African LDCs. Subsidy reform, balancing efficiency and equity. While subsidies often provide critical support to vulnerable populations, inefficient subsidy structures can strain national budgets. Subsidy reforms must balance fiscal responsibility with the need to protect the poor. Case study: Nigeria's fuel subsidy reform. Nigeria's gradual removal of fuel subsidies has been controversial but necessary to reduce fiscal deficits. The government introduced targeted palliatives, such as transportation and food subsidies, to cushion the impact on low-income households. Recommendations: 1. Engage stakeholders. Conduct public consultations to build trust and ensure transparency in subsidy reforms. 2. Invest savings wisely. Channel subsidy savings into visible public goods like schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. Global advocacy for reshaping Africa's financial landscape. The role of the African Union, AU. The AU must play a stronger role in advocating for debt justice at the global level. A unified African voice can push for reforms in global financial systems that disproportionately disadvantage LDCs. Priority actions. 1. Strengthen debt relief mechanisms. Advocate for expanding debt forgiveness programs and ensuring they are accessible to all LDCs. 2. Promote fair trade policies. Address trade imbalances by pushing for better access to global markets and equitable trade terms. Partnerships with emerging economies. African LDCs can diversify their financial partnerships by engaging with emerging economies like China, India, and Brazil. These countries often offer concessional loans and development assistance without stringent conditionalities. Key considerations. 1. Balance dependencies. Avoid over-reliance on any single partner to mitigate geopolitical risks. 2. Focus on development impact. Ensure that financial inflows are tied to projects that promote long-term development. The path forward: balancing debt and development. As African LDCs continue to navigate the complex interplay of debt and development, the emphasis must remain on creating a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient economic future. The next section will delve deeper into practical strategies for aligning fiscal policies with SDG targets, exploring how multi-stakeholder partnerships and regional innovation hubs can accelerate progress. Aligning fiscal policies with SDG targets. Reprioritizing expenditure toward SDG goals. To align fiscal policies with SDG targets, African LDCs must critically assess their budget allocations and prioritize investments in sectors with the highest social and economic returns, such as education, healthcare, and renewable energy. Case study: Ethiopia's pro-poor spending. Ethiopia has allocated significant portions of its budget to pro-poor sectors, achieving notable progress in education and healthcare. By channeling resources into rural education programs and maternal health services, the country has made strides toward SDG 3, good health and well-being, and SDG 4, quality education. Actionable steps. 1. Conduct SDG audits. Assess the alignment of national budgets with SDG priorities and reallocate spending where gaps exist. 2. Use outcome-based budgeting. Link budgetary allocations to measurable SDG outcomes to ensure accountability and effectiveness. Multi-stakeholder partnerships for development. Leveraging the private sector. The private sector can play a pivotal role in advancing SDG-related investments through corporate social responsibility, CSR programs, and impact investing. Partnerships between governments and private companies in health, education, and infrastructure projects have proven successful in reducing funding gaps. Example: South Africa's partnership with the private sector to roll out COVID-19 vaccines showcased the potential of coordinated public-private collaboration. Harnessing civil society organizations, CSOs. CSOs are instrumental in bridging gaps between governments and communities, ensuring that development initiatives are inclusive and equitable. By involving CSOs in the planning and implementation of SDG programs, governments can enhance their reach and impact. Example: Kenya's collaboration with CSOs in climate resilience programs has improved access to sustainable agricultural practices in rural areas. Mobilizing international philanthropy. Philanthropic organizations like the Gates Foundation and Dangote Foundation have supported SDG-related initiatives across Africa. These organizations can complement government efforts by funding innovative projects and providing technical expertise. Recommendations: 1. Establish platforms to coordinate government, private sector, and philanthropic efforts for greater impact. 2. Create incentives for private sector participation in SDG financing. Regional innovation hubs, accelerating development, creating centers of excellence. Regional innovation hubs can drive research and development in critical areas such as renewable energy, digital technology, and healthcare. These hubs can foster knowledge sharing and capacity building, enabling African LDCs to leapfrog development challenges. Example: the Kigali Innovation City in Rwanda has become a hub for technological advancement, attracting investments in ICT and education. Policy recommendations: 1. Allocate resources for establishing innovation hubs in strategic locations. 2. Promote regional collaboration to share resources, expertise, and infrastructure. Encouraging homegrown solutions. Innovation hubs can also focus on addressing local challenges through indigenous knowledge and technology. For example, developing affordable renewable energy solutions tailored to rural Africa can reduce energy poverty while mitigating climate change impacts. Financing infrastructure development for inclusive growth. Blended finance models. Blended finance, which combines public, private, and philanthropic funds, offers a practical solution for funding large-scale infrastructure projects in African LDCs. These models can reduce risks for private investors while ensuring public benefit. Case study: Kenya's Turkana Wind Power Project. This project, financed through a blend of public and private funds, has significantly boosted Kenya's renewable energy capacity and created jobs in one of the country's poorest regions. Regional infrastructure networks. Developing transnational infrastructure such as highways, railways, and energy grids is critical for integrating African economies. These projects enhance trade, reduce logistics costs, and promote economic diversification. Example: the Trans-African Highway Network, which aims to connect major African cities, is a step toward regional economic integration. Recommendations: 1. Prioritize projects with regional and cross-border impact. 2. Ensure environmental and social safeguards in infrastructure planning. Measuring progress, data and accountability, strengthening data systems. Accurate and timely data is essential for tracking progress toward SDGs. African LDCs need to invest in robust statistical systems to monitor development indicators effectively. Example: Nigeria's partnership with international agencies to enhance its national data systems has improved the reliability of its poverty and health metrics. Ensuring accountability. Transparent monitoring frameworks that engage citizens in evaluating government performance are critical. Open data portals and citizen feedback mechanisms can enhance accountability in SDG implementation. Actionable steps. 1. Build capacity in national statistical agencies for better data collection and analysis. 2. Foster partnerships with international organizations to adopt global best practices in data management. Advancing toward resilient economies. The focus now turns to the next crucial step: ensuring resilience in African LDCs by integrating social, economic, and environmental dimensions of sustainable development. The subsequent section will explore the role of adaptive governance, community-driven development, and strategic international alliances in building economies that can withstand future shocks. Building resilience in African LDCs, a holistic approach, adaptive governance for dynamic challenges. Governance structures in African LDCs must evolve to address emerging challenges such as climate change, global economic shocks, and political instability. Adaptive governance involves creating flexible policies that can respond to these uncertainties while maintaining a focus on long-term development goals. Examples of adaptive governance. 1. Botswana's strategic reserves. Botswana's prudent use of diamond revenues to build fiscal reserves exemplifies adaptive governance. These reserves have allowed the country to weather economic downturns without significant disruptions to public services. 2. Rwanda's data-driven policy decisions. Rwanda utilizes real-time data analytics to inform policy adjustments, ensuring rapid responses to crises like COVID-19 while maintaining progress toward SDGs. Recommendations. Establish scenario planning units within government ministries to forecast and prepare for potential crises. Increase investment in training civil servants in crisis management and adaptive policymaking. Community-driven development. Local solutions for local problems. Engaging grassroots communities. Empowering local communities to design and implement development projects ensures that solutions are context-specific and culturally appropriate. Participatory approaches to governance and development foster trust and inclusivity. Case study. Ethiopia's Productive Safety Net Program, PSNP. The PSNP involves communities in decision-making processes for resource allocation, enabling effective targeting of food security and poverty alleviation efforts. Action points. 1. Facilitate community dialogues to identify local priorities and co-create development strategies. 2. Decentralize resource management to regional and local authorities for faster and more effective implementation. Scaling indigenous knowledge. Harnessing indigenous knowledge systems can enhance resilience, particularly in sectors like agriculture and water management. Traditional practices such as terracing and rainwater harvesting have sustained communities in Africa for centuries and can complement modern technologies. Example: Kenya's adoption of traditional water harvesting techniques in arid regions has improved access to water for agriculture and domestic use. Strategic international alliances, leveraging global support, deepening South-South cooperation. African LDCs can strengthen partnerships with other developing countries through South-South cooperation, sharing experiences, expertise, and resources. Countries like India and Brazil have successfully collaborated with African nations on technology transfer, agricultural development, and healthcare initiatives. Example: India's Pan-African e-network project has enhanced telemedicine and online education access in several African LDCs, demonstrating the potential of such collaborations. Reimagining relations with traditional partners. While traditional donors and financial institutions remain important, African LDCs must renegotiate these relationships to focus on mutual benefits rather than dependency. Debt relief programs, technology transfer, and fair trade agreements should become cornerstones of these partnerships. Recent development. In December 2024, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, proposed a revised framework for debt restructuring that ties relief efforts to investments in SDG-aligned projects, marking a potential shift toward more equitable global financial systems. Addressing environmental and economic shocks, building climate resilience. African LDCs are among the most vulnerable to climate change impacts, including droughts, floods, and rising temperatures. Comprehensive climate action plans must integrate mitigation, adaptation, and resilience-building strategies. Recommendations. 1. Expand access to climate finance, advocate for simpler application processes, and increased funding from global climate mechanisms. 2. Invest in renewable energy. Scale up investments in solar, wind, and hydroelectric power to reduce reliance on fossil fuels and increase energy security. Strengthening economic buffers. To protect against external economic shocks, African LDCs need stronger financial safeguards such as sovereign wealth funds and regional monetary agreements. Example: the West African Economic and Monetary Union, WAEMU, provides monetary stability to its member countries, insulating them from global currency fluctuations. The road ahead: balancing growth and equity. As African LDCs navigate their developmental journey, the challenge lies in balancing economic growth with social equity and environmental sustainability. Future sections of this analysis will delve into actionable frameworks for scaling impact at the national and regional levels, focusing on innovation, inclusivity, and resilience as the pillars of sustainable development. Scaling impact through national and regional frameworks. Driving innovation as a catalyst for development, fostering research and development, R&D. Investment in R&D is essential for African LDCs to develop homegrown solutions to their challenges. A focus on technology, agriculture, and healthcare innovation can yield transformative outcomes. Case study: Nigeria's agricultural innovation. The adoption of improved seed varieties and precision farming techniques in Nigeria has increased agricultural productivity, reducing food insecurity while boosting export earnings. Actionable steps. 1. Establish innovation funds to support R&D in universities and private enterprises. 2. Build partnerships with global technology hubs to facilitate knowledge transfer. 3. Incentivize the private sector to invest in R&D through tax breaks and grants. Integrating digital technology across sectors. Digital technology has immense potential to revolutionize education, healthcare, and governance. For instance, e-learning platforms can bridge gaps in educational access, particularly in rural areas. Example: Rwanda's Smart Classrooms initiative integrates digital tools into public schools, improving learning outcomes and equipping students with 21st-century skills. Enhancing regional collaboration for inclusive growth. Regional value chains. African LDCs must work collectively to build regional value chains that capitalize on the continent's comparative advantages. Processing raw materials locally before export can boost revenue and create jobs. Example: the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, offers a platform for countries to develop industries like agro-processing, textiles, and pharmaceuticals, reducing dependency on imported goods. Recommendations. 1. Identify key sectors for regional value chain development. 2. Standardize regulations to facilitate cross-border trade. 3. Invest in shared infrastructure like transport corridors and energy grids. Cross-border education and skills training. Establishing regional centers of excellence in education and vocational training can address skills gaps while fostering cultural and economic integration. Example: the East African Institute of Science and Technology has attracted students from across the region, equipping them with skills in engineering and technology. Emphasizing inclusivity in development policies, empowering marginalized communities. African LDCs must ensure that development benefits are equitably distributed. Programs targeting marginalized groups, including women, youth, and persons with disabilities, are vital for building inclusive societies. Example: Uganda's Youth Livelihood Program provides financing and skills training to unemployed youth, promoting entrepreneurship and reducing inequality. Actionable strategies. 1. Expand access to microfinance and credit facilities for underserved populations. 2. Design policies that address systemic barriers to education and employment for women and marginalized groups. Promoting social protection systems. Developing comprehensive social protection systems can reduce poverty and vulnerability, ensuring that no one is left behind in the development process. Case study. Ghana's Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty (LEAP) program provides cash transfers to vulnerable households, improving their access to healthcare and education. Building economic resilience through diversification, reducing commodity dependence. Over-reliance on commodity exports leaves African LDCs vulnerable to price fluctuations. Diversifying into manufacturing and service sectors can create more stable and sustainable economies. Example: Ethiopia's focus on textile and garment manufacturing has reduced its dependency on agricultural exports while creating thousands of jobs. Recommendations: 1. Develop industrial parks and special economic zones, SEZs, to attract foreign direct investment. 2. Provide targeted support to SMEs in non-commodity sectors. 3. Strengthen access to markets through regional and international trade agreements. Promoting tourism and cultural industries represent untapped potential for many African LDCs. Investments in infrastructure, marketing, and training can boost tourism revenues while preserving cultural heritage. Example: Tanzania's focus on ecotourism and wildlife conservation has made it a leading destination in Africa, generating significant foreign exchange earnings. Strengthening global partnerships for development financing. Advocating for reforms in global financial systems. African LDCs must push for greater equity in global financial systems. This includes advocating for reforms in the IMF and World Bank to prioritize sustainable development and reduce punitive conditionalities. Recent development. In 2024, the United Nations called for a global summit to address the debt burdens of LDCs, emphasizing the need for more inclusive and transparent mechanisms for debt relief. Mobilizing private sector investments. Blended finance models can attract private investments for SDG-related projects. Guarantee mechanisms and risk-sharing agreements can incentivize the private sector to invest in high-impact sectors. Example: Kenya's renewable energy sector has benefited from partnerships with international private investors, scaling up solar and wind energy projects. Paving the way for sustainable progress. The journey toward sustainable development for African LDCs requires an integrated approach that addresses debt management, economic diversification, social equity, and climate resilience. The next section will focus on actionable roadmaps for building resilient institutions, fostering innovation ecosystems, and strengthening governance frameworks to ensure lasting development outcomes. Strengthening institutions and governance for sustainable development. Building resilient institutions. Strong, transparent, and accountable institutions are the backbone of sustainable development. African LDCs must focus on institutional reforms that promote the rule of law, efficient public service delivery, and the fight against corruption. Case study: Botswana's institutional strength. Botswana's institutions, rooted in accountability and transparency, have ensured prudent resource management and political stability, contributing to its socio-economic progress. Recommendations: 1. Implement digital systems to enhance transparency in public financial management. 2. Foster an independent judiciary to uphold the rule of law. 3. Engage civil society and governance to improve accountability. Fostering innovation ecosystems. Innovation ecosystems where academia, industry, and government collaborate can accelerate development in African LDCs. These ecosystems encourage creativity, entrepreneurship, and technological advancement. Example: Kenya's Silicon Savannah demonstrates how innovation hubs can drive economic growth, focusing on fintech, agritech, and e-commerce. Action points: 1. Establish national innovation councils to coordinate R&D efforts. 2. Provide incentives for startups and SMEs to innovate. 3. Build infrastructure for technology incubation and acceleration. Advice to African leaders: 1. Adopt a long-term vision. Leaders must prioritize long-term development goals over short-term political gains. Strategies like Ethiopia's growth and transformation plans show how visionary leadership can yield transformative outcomes. 2. Promote regional solidarity. Regional integration through frameworks like the AfCFTA can unlock economic potential and reduce reliance on external markets. Leaders must foster political will and cooperation to realize these opportunities. 3. Invest in human capital. Education, healthcare, and social protection are critical to empowering citizens and driving innovation. Leaders must allocate resources to ensure equitable access to these services. 4. Embrace good governance. Transparency, accountability, and inclusivity are non-negotiable for sustainable development. Leaders must build institutions that command public trust and support. 5. Champion climate resilience. African LDCs must integrate sustainability into their development agendas. By investing in renewable energy and climate-smart practices, leaders can mitigate vulnerabilities while capitalizing on global green finance opportunities. 6. Diversify economies. Reducing dependence on commodities is essential for stability and growth. Leaders should promote industrialization, tourism, and service industries to build diversified and resilient economies. Summary of key messages. Debt management. African LDCs must adopt innovative debt management strategies, including debt for development swaps, blended financing, and advocacy for global financial reforms. Economic diversification. Investing in manufacturing, services, and tourism can reduce dependency on commodities and enhance economic stability. Social equity. Protecting spending on health, education, and social protection is essential to ensuring inclusive development. Innovation and technology, fostering R&D, embracing digital transformation, and building innovation hubs are critical for future growth. Regional and global cooperation, leveraging regional integration through the AfCFTA and advocating for equitable global financial systems are vital for long-term progress. Climate action, prioritizing renewable energy, climate-smart agriculture, and access to green finance can build resilience against environmental challenges. Good governance, strengthening institutions, promoting transparency, and engaging citizens are the foundations of sustainable development. Final reflection. The challenges facing African LDCs are daunting, but they also present unique opportunities for transformation. By embracing innovation, fostering regional collaboration, and committing to transparent and inclusive governance, African leaders can chart a path toward a sustainable and prosperous future. The resilience of the continent lies in its ability to adapt, innovate, and unite around shared goals. The time for action is now. Africa's future depends on the bold decisions made today. Thank you for watching the Bold African Voice BAV. Let's keep the conversation going. What are your thoughts on Africa's debt crisis? Share your ideas in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on Africa's most critical stories. Hit the notification bell to never miss an episode and join us as we amplify Africa's voice, one story at a time. Together, we shape the future. See you next time on the Bold African Voice, BAV.